Okay, so I'm back. This is still activity 13. This is part 2. And as we were leaving off, we were just applying our first bit of data validation. So we were adding and making sure that we put in 10-digit numbers that begin with 101. And that continues all the way down. We have a little helper tooltip that is provided, and if we put in the wrong kind of number, we get an alert message. This is error, please enter the valid STI. All right. So we're going to move forward to validate the rest of our sheet. So let's look at some other things that we can do here. For the test number, let's say for this example, we've only got a certain couple of tests that are available, okay? It might look like there's 9,465 tests available, but that's not actually true. We only have, and I'll show you a little trick I'm going to do here. I'm going to go Data, Filter. I'm going to click on this little arrow and Filter. The reason I'm doing this is because it's going to show me really clearly all of the different numbers that are available that have been entered into this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually write down these 4 numbers. Maybe I have them somewhere else. And I am going to, these 3 numbers. I'm going to cancel out of that and just turn my filter off. Okay? I really was just using that filter to kind of very quickly see what are the numbers that I currently have in this column. Okay? Now, I'm going to apply some validation. Boom. This time, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to give my user a list of acceptable values that they can put in here. So I'm going to click List. Notice that this is grayed out. I can't click on this one. And Source. It says you can either select from a range or enter items separated by commas. Example, cat, dog, bird. All right. My 3 examples here, and I want you to enter this in. We've got 9186, comma, 9463, comma, 9465. Those are the 3 acceptable test numbers that we can put in. I want to ignore blank, so we're not going to put in like an error message on blank cells. We're not going to force something to get it put in where I don't have student information. And I'm going to provide for my user an in-cell dropdown, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay? Do I want an input message? We're going to skip it for this one. Let's do an error alert. This time we're going to say the title is Enter Valid Test Number. And my message is going to be, please select from the drop-down list. Okay, so I did not put in an error message. I put in an error alert that blocks them from putting in an incorrect test number. And it also tells them a little message if they did it wrong. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. And so now what I have on here, you'll notice that there's a little arrow. And if I click on it, I have my 3 acceptable test numbers. Let's scroll down to the bottom. And I'm going to try and click on one of those. And you can see that it automatically fills in the test number. If my user gets creative and they start putting in the wrong number and they tap enter, again, we're going to get our error message and our error line. Okay, so we're providing feedback to our user to make sure that the information gets entered in correctly. All right, let's keep going. We're going to look at dates. Okay, I can go ahead and I can enter data validation here. I can make sure that the person puts in a date. All right, I could give it between from start date. Let's say We'll start from the beginning of the year, 1/1, let's say 2015. End date. I'm not sure if I need to provide an end date. Let's give this a little bit of a test. I'm not going to provide an input message or an error alert on this one. Let's click OK. Oh, you must enter both a start date and end date values. So our end date then would be our current one, or maybe, let's see if it lets me put it in the future. So let's go 1/1/2030. Okay. All right, cool. So we can put in future dates as well. All right. We can put in our information. Let's try 1/1/2010, which is too early. So the generic response I get here, if I did not provide an error message, it just says the value entered isn't valid. Data validation criteria have been defined for this cell to restrict the values that can be entered. Okay, but I haven't really given my user any information as to what they did wrong. Okay, you know, a reasonable person would just check the test date. Okay, but that's why I would want to, you know, make sure that I provide some kind of an error message so that my user has a clue as to what they did wrong and how to do it correctly. Okay, otherwise, and I'll take this from personal experience, what I'm going to get instead is I'm going to get a bunch of emails of people asking that question, and I'm going to have to send out an email response back. And so this, when you're in the setting of a real life like organization, this error information actually helps kind of streamline the process, and it helps you cut people off at the pass where they would be taking up your time with, you know, what might be considered a silly question, right? So if I want to go back and modify that validation, I'm going to click on E. I'm going to click on data validation, and you're going to see that it has that information already presented in there, like saved in there. All I'm going to do then, instead of changing this, I'm going to click in an error alert, putting in a warning. So this is not going to block them putting in a bad date. It's just going to warn them. Date. Please enter a date no earlier than 1/1/2015. Okay. So now a person can put in the wrong information, 1/1/2010, but it's going to give them a suggestion, and it's going to ask, do they want to continue? Now a person in this scenario, because I didn't block the entry, I just warned them, they might put in yes. Okay, maybe for some reason they needed that specific student. He's been held back 6 years, you know, and they want to have that information on file. It's a silly example, but, you know, there might be a reason why you would want to let a person break a rule, but you just want to warn them, you know, of what you're looking for. Okay? All right. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. All right. So let's look at, grade level, course code, test, and result. Okay, let's look at another way that we can validate a list of information. So over here, let's say I have a piece of information in column 1, and I have my 4 grade levels. Grade level 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay, 9th graders through 12th graders. All right, so in this grade level area here, I'm going to go ahead, highlight that. I'm going to do data validation, and here I'm going to do a list. Boom. And here I'm going to select from a range. So my source, instead of giving a list, I'm actually going to type in, and in fact, look, I can even just, did you see that? With my cursor in the source, I clicked and dragged down, and it automatically filled in that information. So it's looking at column N, N8 through N11, 9 through 10, 11, 12, okay? All right. And maybe so it's a list, it's going to be a drop-down list. I want to give them a drop-down list. My error message is going to block other grades. My title is grade level. Please enter valid grade level. I'm going to click OK. All right, so now I have this list, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it is getting that list from this area. Just to prove a point here, let me show you if I change this to 17 for whatever reason. Now I look at my drop-down list and look, I have 9, 10, 11, and 17. So there are reasons why this might be useful for you. If you expect that the list might change, periodically, then you might want to do that where you reserve an area to populate your list. If I were really doing this, what I would probably do is I would apply some highlighting to make this really kind of show. I might give a label to that area, acceptable grades, and just so that inexperienced users don't mess with it, I would go ahead and I would hide that column so that somebody doesn't accidentally make changes to that without my wanting them to do that, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to have this list here, make sure that it has the correct numbers, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and I want to make sure that this data validation is not going from a list, but it is actually going from this area. Now, there's ways that I can check on that. Okay, so I want to see that you're populating the list from, like we did in that example, where we're using a source of information on the sheet. Okay? All right, so to wrap this up, I'm going to give you a challenge. Course code. I want you to determine there's only a couple of different course codes that, in fact, there might be only 2. Okay. I want you to make sure that only those 2 course codes are entered. Let me give you a little bit of a highlight here. We have 1, 2, 3 different tests. I want you to make sure that those 3 tests are only entered with validation. And I want to make sure that we only have pass or fail as a result. And in this one, I would like that to happen with, let's see. At least one of these I want to be with a drop-down menu. Actually, I think all 3 of these could be done with a drop-down menu, but I want to see you guys at least doing one drop-down menu in these 3 columns. So your challenge is to validate G, H, and I on your own without my help. Okay? That wraps up activity 13. Good luck. If you have questions, please feel free to send me a message.